Hey, it's Perry without a darts. This is new to me, so please bear with me. I am not used to being in front of the camera, but I'm gonna give it a shot. The folks over at Flex Labs, including Dr. Flex himself, reached out just before they filmed and published their own review video on the BK2s, and they saw a distinct lack of documentation. So this is what we're going to be doing here today. This is the BK2s. It is an automatic electric blaster, or AEB. It is a Springer that is primed by a gearbox that sits right in the grip. It is unfortunately not Talon compatible. It has its own mags. However, as you can see, there's plenty of room in this mag well here that you could, and people have already modded these blasters to take Talon magazines. We will not be going over that mod here in this video. We still have not investigated that for ourselves. And unfortunately, due to the placement of where the T238 control board is, it's not as simple as drilling a hole and adding a detent for, a mag retention. So there's a little bit more work that needs to be done if you don't want it to just be pressure fit, which in the mod as it stands now, that's all it is. Okay, that's enough yammering. First, we're gonna talk about this. Every one of our BK2Ss that have come out of the warehouse have come with this shroud just to break up the silhouette and add a little bit more orange where necessary. We of course recommend people, go get orange scars, P-cars, or B-cars from us. It not only will improve your accuracy, but it will also add even more orange and break up the silhouette even further. But first things first, we've got to install this. To do that, I've already done this via Movie Magic. This is a little M-Lock Picatinny bottom rail that comes with and comes pre-installed. It can be a little bit finicky to unscrew. You can just use a Phillips screwdriver and hold on to the nuts from behind if you need that help. Next, you can slide this on, and if you give it a little bit of a twist and shove, you can get it seated back there and place the M-Lock Picatinny on the bottom there and screw it in. Again, you may need to hold on to the back nut and hold it perpendicular to the M-Lock so that it actually locks in, because this way will not secure it. No matter how tight it is, it's this way that you want it to be seated when you're installing it on the blaster itself. But I'm gonna take this off if I can. My hands are already sweaty. It is a hot day here, and I'm going to show you how to change out your barrel. So you've got an M3 hex key here, basically like everything else in the hobby. Well, M3 screws. Oh, I've already taken all of those out. So you can take off this metal shroud, put it right next to your orange one, and that is where your collet is. So now you can unscrew this. Now yours is going to look a little bit different than mine. In its stock form, it will have a single O-ring, and there's this groove in here, which the O-ring has inconveniently fallen into. That groove is actually supposed to hold this clamp, but in our disassembly, this little C-clip thing has kind of deformed past the point of usability. So I ran downstairs and I grabbed two 016 O-rings to make this collet behave more like some of the front of Silly Butts' blasters. So you can throw those in there. You can look down the mag well there, and you'll just barely see it poke out and engage with that ram. And with a bit of pressure, you can screw that on until it's secure. Then you can reapply the shroud as you'd like, or you can throw on a scar or some other thing and make this more utilitarian. Next, we're going to talk about how to remove your spring and install your battery, because they're kind of in the same vein. You've got your extended stock here, which has a little detent that also doubles as your battery door. I'm going to use a tool because I find it quite painful to get out, but it's just this little thing here. A short or small press of it disengages the lock for the stock, and a longer one gets it flush or past flush from this to get at your battery. We really only recommend one kind of battery, and it's this Jike 1100 milliamp hour 3S battery that we carry on the shop. It is similar in form factor to the 950 graphene 3S that we used to sell, but it has an XT30 instead of an XT60. Now, there's probably a little bit of room that you could use this in a pinch if you either change this out for an XT60, if you had a bunch of these lying around, or if you used a XT60 to XT30 adapter. But we don't sell these anymore, so at the time of recording this, we really only recommend this one. It's plenty small, high enough capacity, and there's enough room to plug it in and fit a LiPo alarm. Now that we are partially the way there, you can unscrew this thumb screw and twist, and you can see the end here. So next, make sure you're deprimed. Quick little way to tell is if you've got your spring back here and visible. This right here, your priming handle, will be pulled all the way forward. And then you can grab your flathead or Phillips head screwdriver. I like the stubby ones. And you get your spring. As you can see here, this is actually a Nexus X spring that we were testing. Swap a spring, pop them back in, and now you can reverse the order. You simply slide that over, throw in the thumb screw, plug in your battery and your LiPo alarm, and be careful that these prongs do tend to want to jump out and grab some of the wires. And now you have it installed. It should still stop at each stock point there. So now that we're got our battery back in, all you need to do is load a magazine, short press the trigger, and it will chime with a little da-da-da. That means it's ready to fire. It'll prime once, and now it's loaded a dart. The next trigger pull will actually fire a dart, prime, and load the next dart. That was on single. You've also got full auto at about 6 darts a second. And there's also a way to get into a 2-shot burst mode. You press and hold until the first long beep. And now you're in 2-shot burst mode, and you do the same thing. And now you're back into single fire. Do know that as you're changing these things, you're gonna dry fire quite a bit. It is relatively dry fire safe. It should be noted you should not plug the barrel like this. This is an incredible habit to try and break, but I suggest you do it. The ram and plunger system are connected to a gearbox with a rack and pinion style gear system. And if it encounters more pressure in the system than it's expecting, the gears can wrap around and hold the breech open partially. Now, the way to get around that, well, there's 2 ways. You can do what we did and what Flex Labs did first off, and that was to disassemble and find out what went wrong. But turns out you do not need to do that. We're still in the primed position. You just need to press and hold for 10 to 15 seconds, and it will engage a deprime / storage sequence, which basically gets the spring back to its resting state, deprimes the blaster, and as long as you have cleared out any jams, it'll throw the ram forward, and then all you need to do is press the trigger again. You can see we're primed here. You press and hold. That was the 2-shot burst mode. And then it does 2 long beeps. And so now you see the spring, and we are in fact deprime. And then once again, one single to load, next to fire, and it will load again. So that's the sequence as it goes to deprime, and in case there's a squib or a jam, it will always hold itself locked back so you can get a finger in there and clear out a jam. Keep your fingers clear when it's live. You should always probably put it into safe so you can't even pull the trigger. Again, clear out your jams, and then deprime sequence, 10 to 15 seconds on the hold. It is the 2 long beeps. Okay, we talked about the spring, we talked about the barrel. I think I already mentioned about scars, but depending on if you're going to be using the Shroud or not, there is limited compatibility. I tend to like some of these more minimalist P cars because they'll fit whether you have an exposed barrel or a shroud. Something like this Saber B car is perfect for this as long as you install it before you put your shroud on, because these little grub screws tend to be behind the shroud itself. So that's the only compatibility issue I can see. If you're using the shroud and you're using a bulkier rifling attachment that's got some other way of attaching, then you might need to install it and then install the shroud. Next, let's talk about the mag well. Now, while I said I will not be covering the Talon mod in this video, I am going to mention that these 12-round BKS mags are available separately on our shop, and they're fairly well made for what they are. They've got some nice features, nice wide feeding lip, and easy toolless access to your follower. The follower and spring has this spring guide that, if you'd like, you can change this 12-round mag to 14, maybe even 15 rounds. Here I've got an example that Luke did very, very last minute last Thursday. So you put on your safety glasses and you just snip away at these little bosses here. I am making much more of a mess than it needed to be. You could probably use something like an oscillating multi-tool or a Dremel and get a cleaner cut, but there's not really a wrong way to do this. Throw that back in, and now you're ready to hold up to 15 darts in a 12 dart mag. That makes these much less aggravating to use. I'll have you know, when we were at the latest Fort Borst game up in Washington, we modded a couple of these because we kept overloading mags. Your muscle memory just remembers to count to 15 when you're used to Talons, and 23 when you're used to Kodas. And we kept overloading these because they're only 12 darts capacity, but it's just a very simple mod, and there doesn't seem to be any reason for that extended spring guide. There's no effect on the maximum rate of fire on this mag or anything. So that's why we suggest modding these. A couple more things to note before I go is that there's also a sister to this called the BK2s. It merely has a longer barrel, a longer shroud, and potentially a beefier spring. We have been testing with this one and haven't been really getting that much higher performance with a beefier spring, and the longer barrels tend to decrease performance or make it more inconsistent. Hopefully we will have a 2.0 spring to test soon for longer barrels and higher FPS. In any case, that's all I have for the BK2s. If you have any other tips or tricks that you think we've missed, let us know down in the comments or email us, orders@outofdarts.com. We're putting this on our second channel so we can re-upload without fear of the algorithm. And so we will always make this better for you. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Perry, and we're out of darts.